Tonight, breaking news, the update just in on former President Bill Clinton after he was admitted to a California ICU. His spokesperson confirming the 75-year-old will stay in the hospital overnight, where he's being treated for an infection. His wife, Hillary Clinton, by his side at the hospital. Our Miguel Almaguer is there with the latest on his condition. Also tonight, an FDA panel has unanimously voted to recommend Johnson & Johnson's booster shot, and this one will be available to anyone 18 and older who received the company's first dose. But it comes as many Americans refuse to get vaccinated. Chicago's police union now suing the city over a vaccine mandate. Breaking news overseas, a British lawmaker stabbed to death while meeting with constituents inside of a church. Prime Minister Boris Johnson calling him one of the most gentle people in politics. Richard Engel joins Top Story tonight with the latest on the investigation. Back here at home, the Capitol officer arrested in connection to the January 6th insurrection. Tonight, facing obstruction of justice charges, how authorities say he helped those who stormed the Capitol. Mother God mystery, the spiritual leader found mummified inside the home of one of her followers. Her family and investigators sitting down with Dateline's Keith Morrison. Keith joining tonight with a preview. And Adele is back. The singer dropping new music for the first time since 2015, and it has already broken Spotify's record for the most streams in a single day. Top Story starts right now. And good evening, I'm Tom Llamas. We begin Top Story tonight with breaking news. Former President Bill Clinton will remain at a California hospital for another night, and he's being treated for an infection. We are being told this is not related to COVID-19. His spokesperson confirming the news in a statement late today, but adding the 75-year-old is in excellent spirits and that all health indicators are trending in the right direction. The former president, who has a history of heart problems, has been at UC Irvine's Medical Center since Tuesday. His wife, Hillary Clinton, visiting him at the hospital. You see her there last night and today. The former president was in Southern California for a charity event when he started to feel fatigued. President Biden today saying he spoke to Clinton on the phone and that he appears to be doing well. Let's get right to NBC's Miguel Almaguer, who leads us off tonight from Irvine.
Spending his fourth day at the UC Irvine Medical Center, former President Bill Clinton is said to be in good spirits after sources tell NBC News he was diagnosed with a urological infection that spread into his bloodstream. With Hillary Rodham Clinton also at the hospital last night and today, the former president, feeling fatigued on Tuesday, decided to go to the hospital for testing. A source close to the situation says he was in the ICU as a precaution, but is not under intensive care. In a joint statement, Clinton's doctors said in part his white blood cell count is trending down, and he is responding to antibiotics well.
It looks like the president was diagnosed with a urine infection that led to sepsis, and that he had an infection that was in the bloodstream. And sepsis can cause severe inflammation that can then lead to a lot of complications. So it's very important to treat it early, recognize it as soon as possible.
The former president was in Southern California for a Clinton Foundation event. Feeling ill Tuesday, he was taken to the UCI Med Center and administered IV, antibiotics, and fluids for a non-COVID related infection. Continuously monitored, his medical team in California is in close touch with his doctors in New York. Today, President Biden checking in on former President Clinton.
He seems to be, God willing, doing well.
The 75-year-old two-term president has a history of heart disease, leading him to change his lifestyle years ago.
I now know more than I did then about how much you can aggravate heart troubles, not just by eating poorly or failing to exercise, but also by not sleeping enough or by putting yourself in positions of too much stress.
Tonight, the nation's 42nd president suffering a serious health scare, but already back on his feet.
All right, Miguel joins us now from Irvine, California there. Miguel, as you mentioned, the president has been in the hospital since Tuesday. So even though he's doing better, it seems that his condition was pretty serious.
Yeah, Tom, they're certainly monitoring his condition very closely. He is set to be released tomorrow as he continues his treatment here at the hospital. And doctors tell us if he's given a clean bill of health, he could actually travel back home to New York if he chooses to. Tom?
Miguel Almaguer leading us off tonight here on Top Story. For more on President Clinton's health scare and prognosis, NBC News senior medical correspondent Dr. John Torres joins us now. Dr. Torres, as Miguel mentioned there, President Clinton has had some health issues in the past. He's 75 years old. How common is an infection like this?
And Tom, what we say in medicine is this is not necessarily common, but it's not uncommon either. In other words, we see people like this all the time, especially in the emergency room where I work, and especially as they start getting older, because here's typically what happens is they get a urinary tract infection, which happens to a lot of people around the world. But the older you get, the less likely you are to notice the symptoms, which means you're going to let it last a little bit longer. And then it spreads from your urinary tract into your bloodstream, and that's when it starts becoming dangerous. That's when they start admitting you to the hospital, putting you on IV antibiotics and IV rehydration fluids, and that's where we are right now with former President Clinton. Yeah, there was a time where President Clinton was known for his love of McDonald's, but he changed his eating habits, his lifestyle. If he was your patient, what would you be on the lookout for right now when he left the hospital? You know, one of the main things I'd be on the lookout for is the fact that he started bumping up against that sepsis diagnosis. In other words, it doesn't seem like he actually got into that area, which is good because that's a dangerous area to be in. But since he started approaching it, we need to be concerned because over the next couple of months, that makes him more susceptible for this happening again. And just doing regular screening exams, probably regular urine tests as well to make sure that that infection is gone and doesn't come back, are what they're going to be doing over the next few months, essentially just keeping a very close eye on him, Tom. Dr. John Torres, we appreciate it. The other major headline tonight, an FDA advisory panel has recommended J&J booster shots for emergency use, and the age group approved may surprise you. NBC's Gabe Gutierrez has the latest.
Marking another major step in the booster battle, today an FDA advisory panel voted unanimously to recommend authorizing an extra shot for Johnson & Johnson's vaccine for anyone 18 and older, at least 2 months after the initial dose. Regulators did not see any evidence of serious safety concerns, but noted they weren't given enough time to independently review much of J&J's data.
We are seeing that people who receive the Johnson & Johnson vaccine have a slightly higher risk of severe disease, hospitalization, and death versus people who got the Pfizer and Moderna vaccine. So I do think an additional dose is warranted for people who got 1 dose of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine.
The vote comes after the panel unanimously recommended the use of a half-dose Moderna booster for many Americans yesterday. The FDA itself typically follows the panel's advice and is expected to rule on both boosters within days before the CDC would sign off. A confusing process for many Americans because it usually plays out away from the spotlight.
I think this is an unprecedented, historic situation that the American public is so intimately aware of.
The panel also discussed whether it's okay to mix and match vaccines. For example, getting a Moderna booster if you got a J&J initial dose. The advisors haven't yet voted on a position, but indicated there is a robust antibody response, no matter which booster you get. Still, there's some skepticism. This woman got 2 Pfizer shots and doesn't want another.
Because every 6 months or 3 months, they're going to keep giving me a new needle. No, I'm not a pincushion.
Late today, the CDC put out updated guidance for the holidays, recommending people delay traveling until they're fully vaccinated, stressing that outdoors is safer than indoors, and urging people who are sick or have symptoms not to host or attend a gathering.
Gabe joins us now here in New York. And Gabe, I know you have another big update for us. The CDC has also just expanded its list of underlying medical conditions for those at higher risk for COVID.
Yeah, that's right, Tom. For the first time, the CDC has added people with mental illnesses, including mood disorders such as depression, to that list. That means an extra 25 million people may be eligible for boosters. Tom?
Okay, Gabe, thank you for that. Staying on vaccines tonight, but now we move to the controversy over mandates. In Chicago, police officers are threatening a mass walkout this weekend over vaccine mandates from the city. All public workers must declare their COVID-19 vaccination status by midnight tonight, but thousands of officers are refusing to comply. NBC's Megan Fitzgerald has more on what these kinds of protests could mean nationwide.
Tonight, President Biden announcing on November 8th the U.S. will open its borders to travelers from other countries, but only if they've been fully vaccinated. Meanwhile, here at home, COVID vaccine mandates are fueling even more showdowns nationwide.
Protect medical freedom!
with new fears they could make already critical work shortages even worse.
I guarantee you at least half the department staying home come Saturday morning.
In Chicago, thousands of police officers backed by their union are threatening not to come to work tomorrow. They're protesting the mayor's order, requiring all city employees to report their vaccination status by tonight.
If those who are sworn to uphold the law act as if they're above the law, we're not going to tolerate that. That's not acceptable.
It's happening as the city sees a surge in violence. Murders up over last year. The governor offering up the National Guard in case of a massive police no-show. While in Seattle, police are facing a showdown of their own.
Any loss of an officer right now would be detrimental to our city's current public safety crisis.
The force is required to show proof of vaccination by Monday, but so far, more than 200 officers have not complied. The police department already dealing with a crime wave, activating their emergency plan, even asking detectives to go out on street patrol.
Our first concern is those priority one calls, those crime in progress calls and whatnot, and having the staffing levels available to respond.
Meanwhile, at America's airports, 40% of TSA agents have not reported their vaccination status. The deadline just a month away, while thousands of pilots are still unvaccinated too, with mandates looming, including American Airlines, which is requiring all pilots to be vaccinated by November 24th.
It's vaccination or termination. We've got some 3,900 pilots now that are in the process of making that choice or not, or going for the exemption. That's a lot of pilots.
Megan Fitzgerald joins us now from Chicago. Megan, it's important to point out that these aren't all mandatory vaccinations, just mandatory disclosures.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. These officers have the option to not get vaccinated. They just need to do bi-weekly COVID tests, but that is something that they'll have to pay for out of their own pocket. Tom?
Megan, thank you. Turning overseas now, the UK on high alert after British lawmaker David Amess was stabbed to death. Authorities just declaring it a terrorist incident as people across the political spectrum offered their condolences. NBC News chief foreign correspondent Richard Engel reports.
British authorities say a man burst into this church in an English seaside town at lunchtime, attacking and repeatedly stabbing a member of parliament while he was meeting constituents. A suspect was detained.
A 25-year-old man was arrested immediately at the scene on suspicion of murder.
Police arrived quickly and an air ambulance, but it was too late to save Sir David Amess, a 69-year-old Conservative member of Parliament for nearly 40 years. So far, police haven't identified a motive or revealed details about the suspect, but they're not ruling out terrorism. Prime Minister Boris Johnson led the tributes, calling Amess the nicest man in British politics.
Our thoughts are very much today with his wife, his children and his family.
A supporter of the UK's exit from the European Union and an advocate of animal rights, Amess was popular and approachable.
No one deserves anything like that. Whatever you think about politically, it's just feel for his families.
David would always try and help you if he could.
Okay, Richard Engel joining us now from London. Richard, Britain's still recovering from the shock of this attack. Explain to our viewers where this exactly happened and what, if any, security measures were in place.
So this happened in a seaside town, about an hour and a half's drive, 2 hours depending on traffic, outside of London. A relatively small town. It had a town that had been campaigning to become a city, and Sir David Amess was a popular member of Parliament, a local fixture. He was known to be approachable. You could see him at the local restaurants. You could see him walking down the street, and that is part of the democratic tradition in this country that is valued. People like that they can go up to their elected representatives and talk to them and engage them in conversation. And he was meeting with the public today, greeting constituents, hearing their grievances, when suddenly a man burst into that church and immediately attacked him and stabbed him repeatedly. And this is unfortunately the second time in 5 years that a member of Parliament, while greeting members of the public, was killed in an act of violence, which is now being investigated as a potential act of terrorism.
New developments in the investigation into the January 6th Capitol insurrection. A 25-year veteran of the U.S. Capitol Police Force now charged with obstruction of justice, accused of trying to protect a man who allegedly stormed the Capitol that day. Pete Williams reports.
5 days before the Capitol riot, federal prosecutors say a U.S. Capitol policeman, K-9 officer Michael Angelo Riley, 25 years on the force, struck up a Facebook friendship with a man in an online group devoted to fishing. According to law enforcement officials, that man was Jacob Hiles, a Virginia charter boat captain. The day after the riot, the charges say, Officer Riley noticed that Hiles had posted pictures and videos showing himself inside the Capitol during the riot. A federal grand jury indictment says Riley immediately reached out with a Facebook direct message that said, "I'm a Capitol police officer who agrees with your political stance. Take down that part about being in the building." The charges say Riley warned him that police and the FBI were investigating and that anyone who was in the Capitol was going to be charged. "Just looking out," Riley wrote. A week later, he told Hiles again, "Get off of social media," according to court documents.
Here he's helping one of the people who overran the Capitol. And even more than that help, he's trying to make it more difficult for law enforcement to investigate and bring to justice people who were involved in the insurrection.
Prosecutors say when Riley discovered that the FBI knew the two had been in contact, he deleted all their direct messages. The Capitol Police Chief Tom Manger says a charge of obstruction of justice is a serious allegation and that Capitol Police will conduct a separate investigation of his conduct. Jacob Hiles has pleaded guilty to illegally parading in the Capitol and will be sentenced in December.
Pete joins us now. Pete, we know what's happened with that rioter, Jacob Hiles, that you just mentioned. So what's the status of the court proceedings against the officer, Officer Riley, who's now been indicted?
He appeared briefly in federal court today. He was released on bail, told not to have a gun. He'll be back next week to formally enter his plea. The police union, Tom, says he has the presumption of innocence and people should wait until the court process plays out before passing judgment on Officer Riley.
Okay, Pete, thank you for that. Next night, one of Boeing's top test pilots was indicted by a federal grand jury today. He's now accused of misleading regulators about technical problems with the 737 MAX jet that led to 2 deadly crashes, killing more than 300 people. NBC's Tom Costello has more.
Boeing's former chief test pilot today facing a federal judge. Mark Faulkner, the first person to face criminal charges related to problems with the 737 MAX that led to 2 accidents overseas and the deaths of 346 people. Prosecutors allege, quote, in an attempt to save Boeing money, Faulkner allegedly withheld critical information from regulators. His callous choice to mislead the FAA hampered the agency's ability to protect the flying public. Faulkner accused of withholding key information about the 737 MAX's new system called MCAS, the system designed to help stabilize the aircraft's new design, but also blamed for contributing to both crashes. According to the indictment, the FAA had been told MCAS would operate only at high speeds. Prosecutors say Faulkner later learned the system also ran at slower speeds when it should not have, dangerously pitching the aircraft towards the ground. Compounding the problem, pilots were not trained to handle the issue.
If Boeing would have advertised that, then it could have created a requirement for more training by the airlines when they bought their new 737 MAXs to receive that kind of training. And Boeing didn't want that. They were selling the MAX, saying that it was just like flying the old airplane. You didn't need any more significant training.
Faulkner wrote to another Boeing test pilot in an email, "So I basically lied to regulators unknowingly." Faulkner bragged of, quote, using Jedi mind tricks on regulators and complained that the MAX was designed by clowns who in turn are supervised by monkeys. 2 of those 737 MAX jets later crashed, one in Indonesia, the other in Ethiopia. Boeing has already agreed to pay $2.5 billion to settle a Justice Department investigation, admitting employees did mislead regulators about the safety of the MAX. For the families of the victims,
they do also believe that it's a whitewash. They believe that it's a situation where this engineer pilot is being thrown under the bus.
But Faulkner's attorney said today,
everyone who was affected by this tragedy deserved a search for the truth, not a search for a scapegoat. And if the government takes this case to trial, the truth will show that Mark did not cause this tragedy, Mark did not lie, and Mark should not be charged.
All right, Tom Costello joins us now from Reagan National Airport. Tom, to be clear here, Faulkner is not accused of designing the system that contributed to the crash. He's accused of knowing that it could misfire, but hiding that information from the FAA.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And we know that MCAS did misfire in both of those crashes overseas. And listen, veteran pilots and investigators have said that the crews on those two planes, their actions may have contributed to the crashes, although underscoring MCAS misfired in both cases and put both planes into a fatal nosedive. We should make the point. Boeing has since redesigned the system completely. It's been approved by the FAA. The 737 MAX is flying again over the last year. Chances are, if you've flown over the last few months, you've been on a 737 MAX. I know I have. Tom?
All right, Tom Costello for us. Tom, thank you for that. Turning now to what could be a shipping nightmare before Christmas. Will gifts be delivered on time? Supply chain issues are affecting toy makers nationwide, and it might get in the way of your kids' wish list this holiday season. NBC's Vicky Nguyen has the details.
Here inside the Rodon factory in Pennsylvania, they're cranking out more than 450 products, including these small plastic parts vital to the K'NEX building set. But toy maker Basic Fun is gearing up for an unpredictable holiday season.
Try to shop early because I think it's going to be very difficult coming through after Thanksgiving.
Items like tape, paper, and pallets that used to take 3 weeks to arrive now take 6 to 10 weeks.
You only have control of so much. What we can do is look at all the available material on hand. How can we turn it into a finished good as quickly as possible?
The pandemic is one factor in the supply chain, but raw materials like this used to make plastic parts for toys, well, these come from Texas. And that's a state that's been hit hard by natural disasters like flooding and ice storms, shutting down factories there.
Toys made by Basic Fun overseas are also facing delays and increased costs getting to the U.S. The supply chain Scrooge affecting stores like Kip's Toyland in California, which is out of K'NEX.
If you can hear me, we love your product.
And Lily Kipper says several companies have even canceled her store's orders.
When we are like, hey, where's our toys? They're like, oh, it'll be there when it gets there.
It's all adding up to higher prices and early bargain hunting. A recent survey showed 37% of gift shoppers said they started in August and September.
Just how important is the holiday season to a toy company?
20 to 30% of our revenue was in the first 6 months of the year. 70% is in the last 6 months of the year.
All right, Vicky Nguyen joins us now live here on Top Story. Vicky, any idea how long we should expect these higher prices on items like gifts and toys?
Tom, through the holidays and beyond, according to the analysts we're talking to. Think of it this way. A source close to the shipping industry says a cargo container that used to cost $3,000 to get from point A to point B now costs $21,000. So those costs are going to come trickling down to you and me, the consumer. So my advice here is to look for everything that you can on sale. Shop early, shop often, make a budget, and stick to it. Tom?
Vicky, I saw you there mention K'NEX in your story. Are there other toys that will likely be particularly hard to shop for this year?
Yeah, according to Toy Insider, the hot toys this year, starting with the toddlers, anything that is a learning toy, there's this thing called the Fly Bar bumper car that is expected to fly off shelves. It's not cheap. It's around $180, but look it up. It looks crazy fun. If you have elementary age kids, anything LOL, dolls or dollhouses, that's going to be hot. Also superhero items. And then for the tweens, Tom, I don't know if you had one of these, but the Tamagotchis, they're coming back.
I was a little too old, but I know that's a hot gift, and I need to get a subscription to Toy Insider. All right, Vicky Nguyen, we love having you here on Top Story. Have a great weekend. Still much more ahead tonight. Actress Katie Sagal hospitalized. The son of Anarchy and Married with Children star hit by a car in Los Angeles. We have an update on her condition tonight. Plus, the new video of a suspect, look at this, firing a gun out of a sunroof. One of the bullets hitting a 12-year-old child. And Alec Murdaugh extradited back to South Carolina after he was arrested on fraud charges. Vaughn Hilliard working the case for Top Story. He joins the broadcast right after this quick break. Stay with us. Back now in Top Story with the latest on Alec Murdaugh, the once prominent attorney being extradited back to South Carolina after he was arrested on fraud charges. Now Murdaugh's own lawyer speaking out, even admitting to his client's alleged financial wrongdoing as questions mount about the double murder of Murdaugh's wife and son. Vaughn Hilliard has more.
Tonight, Alec Murdaugh heading back home to South Carolina under the custody of authorities to face the new fraud charges. Authorities alleging he funneled millions of dollars meant for the sons of his former housekeeper as part of a settlement arrangement after she died at the Murdaugh family home. Murdoch's lawyer acknowledging the alleged financial schemes on Good Morning America.
We're going to have a bond hearing early next week on those issues, and he has indicated clearly that he is going to try to right every wrong, financial wrong, and others that he may have committed. Look, he's reconciled to the fact he's going to prison.
Blaming Murdoch's opioid addiction for his actions.
He has a long-term Oxycontin opiate addiction, which drove him, well, I don't know if it drove him, but it put him in a position where he did these stupid, illegal things.
Murdoch's name has been in the public eye since the unsolved murders of his wife and son this summer. His attorneys say he had nothing to do with them. But there are also still deep questions about what took place last month on the side of a South Carolina highway when Murdoch's lawyers say Murdoch asked a former client, Curtis Smith, to shoot him and take his life.
He met with Smith on the side of the road, gave him the gun, said, I'm going to look like I broke down, drive by and shoot me, which is exactly what Smith did.
On Thursday night, though, Smith refuted that version of events, telling NBC News that he had no knowledge of Murdoch's intentions.
And he standing like this. He said, you going to shoot me? I said, no.
Both sides are also disputing the injuries that Murdoch sustained during the incident.
What percent are you positive that he didn't get shot? If you could put a percentage on it.
1,000.
He didn't get shot.
But Murdoch's legal team today providing NBC News with hospital records that show he sustained 2 bullet wounds to the head.
His skull was fractured, he had a brain bleed, and he was put in ICU because his life was in danger as a result of being shot in the head.
How he sustained those wounds, like so many other questions, remain unanswered.
All right, Vaughn joins us now on set here. So Murdoch was supposed to be in court today. What happened?
He was supposed to be in front of a judge for this extradition hearing in Orange County, Florida, but ultimately he waived his rights to appear before that judge and said, I'll head back to South Carolina, where early next week he is set to appear before a judge to actually face these charges. Now, a reminder for everyone, this is the second set of charges for alleged financial crimes. He was already appeared before a judge prior, but he posted bail and he was allowed to go to Florida in that drug treatment facility where ultimately just yesterday that second arrest took place. We will wait to see next week how that second court appearance goes.
All right, Vaughn, we thank you for that. When we come back, the swift backlash over comments made by a school administrator after she was heard saying teachers should balance books about the Holocaust with a, quote, opposing view. The statement just released tonight from the school, and more fallout over Dave Chappelle's Netflix special, why the company has fired an employee just days before a planned walkout. Stay with us. Back now with Top Stories newsfeed, and we begin with Nicholas Cruz set to plead guilty in the 2018 Parkland High School massacre. The 23-year-old is charged with 17 counts of first-degree murder and 17 counts of attempted murder. The pleas come with no conditions, and prosecutors are planning to seek the death penalty. That will be decided by a jury. The search tonight for the suspect who shot a 12-year-old girl outside of Washington, D.C. Video released by police shows the suspect firing a gun out of a moving car's sunroof. The child was shot in the stomach while inside of a restaurant. She remains in the hospital in critical condition. Police do not believe she was the intended target. The Department of Justice will ask the Supreme Court for an emergency halt to Texas's restrictive abortion law. The announcement follows a decision by a federal appeals court that allowed the near total abortion ban to remain in effect. This will be the second time the high court is asked to put the law on hold. Last month, the court allowed it to take effect in a 5-4 decision. More fallout from Dave Chappelle's new Netflix special. The streaming giant has fired an employee for sharing confidential information about the special that was published in an article earlier this week. It comes days before a planned employee walkout over the company's refusal to take down the closer, which advocate groups have called homophobic and transphobic. And actress Katie Sagal is recovering after she was hit by a car in L.A. The Sons of Anarchy and Married with Children star was reportedly struck as she was crossing the street. Her spokesperson confirming she was taken to the hospital but says she is doing okay. The driver remained on the scene. No citations were issued. Now turning to the Americas, focusing on stories from the U.S. and across Latin America. Tonight we head to the U.S.-Mexico border where the Biden administration is preparing to reinstate a Trump-era immigration policy known as Remain in Mexico. The same policy that the president once called inhumane. Now, a Texas district court ruling the White House's pause on the program was arbitrary and should return. Here's NBC News correspondent Julia Ainsley.
Tonight, conceding to legal challenges the Biden administration preparing to reinstate President Trump's Remain in Mexico immigration policy next month. The reversal coming amid a record year for border crossings. U.S. Border Patrol encountering more than 213,000 migrants in July alone, marking a 21-year high. The program, formerly known as Migrant Protection Protocol, forces migrants to stay in Mexico as they await asylum hearings in the United States. A Texas district court this summer ruling the White House had arbitrarily ended the program, paving the way for its return in mid-November. The policy, which was implemented in 2019, expelled more than 60,000 migrants. Many left to wait for weeks, even months, in sprawling tent cities across the U.S.-Mexico border. Our Gabe Gutierrez visited one of those makeshift camps in Matamoros, Mexico, as the policy was lifted.
Right now, there are about 80 or so migrants in this shelter. Some have been waiting for asylum for more than a year, and they tell me they feel like they're in immigration limbo.
Meeting families seeking a better life in the United States. We're desperate, Janine Torres told us. As a mother, we want the best for our kids. President Biden has strongly criticized the policy, calling it inhumane, making it a priority to suspend it in the early days of his presidency.
Rolling back the policies of Remain in Mexico, sitting on the edge of the Rio Grande in a muddy circumstance with not enough to eat, I make no apologies for that.
The same camps that dwindled in size after the policy was paused could make a return. But reinstating the policy this time is dependent on Mexico agreeing to hold migrants, many of them not Mexican nationals, on its soil. Discussions between both countries are still ongoing.
Julia Ainsley joins us now. And Julia, to be clear on this, President Biden did campaign against this. We heard it there in your story, but the courts ruled against him. So essentially the Biden administration's hands are tied, and they're going to have to comply with that court order.
That's right. They've essentially been backed into a corner by the courts here, Tom, and they've gone as far as the Supreme Court to try to get that overturned. Now, there is still an appeal pending, and they've done a different kind of termination memo to see if maybe that might get them a different result. The other way out of this is if Mexico does not agree to reinstate the policy or doesn't agree to the terms. So there is a way that this could lift, but right now they are going forward under court order with implementing Remain in Mexico by mid-November.
Okay, Julia, thank you for that. Now to Top Stories Global Watch. We begin in Afghanistan, where there has been another deadly mosque bombing. Suicide bombers attacking a Shiite mosque that was packed with worshipers for Friday prayers. Nearly 50 people killed and dozens injured. No one has claimed responsibility for the attack, but it comes 1 week after ISIS carried out a deadly mosque bombing in the northern part of the country. Mass protests in Italy today after a COVID-19 mandate for all workers went into effect today. The largest demonstrations in a northern port city where thousands of protesters gathered, some carrying flares. Labor groups there have threatened to block operations starting today. All workers will need to show a Green Pass QR code that shows proof of full vaccination, recent recovery from the virus of a negative test within 48 hours. And to Australia, where a man used construction equipment to go on a crime spree. Check this out. New video capturing the men using a front-end loader to smash through a motorcycle shop and steal 2 bikes. The suspect then leading police on a chase in the tractor. He eventually tried to flee on foot but was arrested. Now to Southlake, Texas, back here in the States, where the school district is once again at the center of a controversy after NBC News obtained exclusive audio of a school administrator telling teachers they should balance books about the Holocaust with a, quote, opposing view. NBC's Antonia Hilton has that story.
Wes Frierson, a parent of 2 daughters in Southlake, is uncertain about his kids' education.
With some of the local politics right now, I'm not sure that teachers feel supported.
The district already in the spotlight after parents clashed over its diversity plan, now facing new pushback over which books are allowed in their libraries, with some teachers placing caution tape over bookshelves, calling the move censorship. It all started when a 4th grade teacher was reprimanded after a parent complained about her having a book about anti-racism.
I couldn't believe it. She's the kind of teacher that we would hope the district would be trying to attract.
The district sent educators new guidance to vet all books, instructing them to not allow singular perspectives that could be considered offensive. This coming after Texas passed a law banning the teaching of concepts that could make individuals feel guilt or anguish. due to their race. NBC News obtained exclusive, secretly recorded audio of a school training.
We are in the middle of a political mess.
The director of curriculum, Gina Petty, offers an example for teachers. Balance books about the Holocaust with an opposing view.
Make sure that if you have a book on the Holocaust, that you have one that has other.
How do you oppose the Holocaust? I met with 2 concerned teachers in Southlake. We obscured their identities because they feared speaking out could cost them their jobs.
I was in such shock when I heard these words. We felt this was necessary because we felt like no one was going to listen until a teacher spoke up.
And it's not just in Southlake. Across the country, educators are facing new policies restricting how they can educate students about race, from Tennessee to Pennsylvania. Southlake School District told NBC News they were helping teachers comply with Texas law, and the district has not and will not mandate books be removed.
The district says that they have not told teachers to ban books, to completely shut down libraries. What are you seeing?
That's a lie. It is a flat-out lie. Like, how could you even make that statement?
What do you think is at stake here?
In books, children see what the world can be, and to have that taken away because we're afraid of a few parents getting upset about a word or two or an idea that they've imagined is in a book is unthinkable.
Wes Frierson says his daughters see what's happening.
Unfortunately, for kids under the age of mine, I think as they become aware of the world, I think they just see the world as very highly politicized.
But parents hope that politics find a way out of public schools. Antonia Hilton, NBC News, Southlake.
And today, the Carroll Independent School District released a statement saying Gina Petty's comments were, quote, in no way to convey that the Holocaust was anything less than a terrible event in history. We recognize there are not two sides of the Holocaust. When we come back tonight, what happened to Mother God? Family members and investigators speaking out for the first time since the mysterious death of spiritual leader Amy Carlson. And Dateline's Keith Morrison joins Top Story tonight with a preview. Stay with us. Welcome back. If it's Friday night, you know it is Dateline. Tonight, our team looks at a gruesome discovery that revealed the inner workings of a spiritual movement. The woman that some people called Mother God found mummified in the house of one of her followers in rural Colorado.
Mother God's message resonated very strongly with some people. Hundreds of them came to live with her over the years. Many more followed her online. Amanda Ray has made it her mission to understand it all.
3D world, in their eyes, is the cabal, it's the evil, it's, you can't trust anybody at all.
3D world is the same as what you probably call the world, day-to-day reality. Followers of Mother God think this world is evil, full of lies and conspiracies. But by following the teachings, they can leave this earth and reach a new, better one called 5D. The fifth dimension.
5D was really this planetary ascension where we're going to just ascend into a whole new dimension, a higher dimension where we are going to live as a planet at this higher frequency, and we're going to experience just love and peace, no hate, no crime.
Their only way to the 5D was through her.
Their message was that God is a woman, she's here on the planet in physical form, and her name is Amy Carlson.
Amy Carlson, the woman at the center of a mystery.
The case is the subject of a special 2-hour edition of Dateline tonight. And Dateline correspondent Keith Morrison joins us now. Keith, this one is pretty creepy. The followers called the leader of this group, Amy Carlson, Mother of God. What can you tell us about her, and what was it like for police to make that discovery?
It was, how does a woman become a god? Well, in Amy Carlson's case, that story is complicated and absolutely absorbing. The strangest behaviors you could possibly imagine, which ended up in a place called Saguache County, Colorado, a very rural area, but also an area which is known for its unusual religious observations of various different kinds of religions. And that's where Amy wound up. But how she got there is the story that's truly interesting and the one that we're going to be telling on Dateline. How anybody would think that they could possibly be a god, but that intelligent people, quite a lot of them, thousands around the world, follow this woman and join in the idea that somehow she is Mother God.
And Keith, I know you had a moment with law enforcement. That was really a turning point in the investigation. Let's look at that clip now.
Burning sage in the room, putting essential oils on the corpse, in the room and on the corpse to keep the odor down.
They were in effect worshiping that corpse.
Yes.
What was your visceral reaction immediately when you saw that?
Wow. I mean, it's just shake and go, wow. There's not much more I can say. I've been doing this for 26 years. I used to say, I've seen it all. I don't say that anymore.
Keith, we're talking about a real-life mummy here, if you will. Where are Carlson's followers now?
Well, they have scattered. At the time, they were waiting for her to ascend into whatever, the fifth dimension or something, another dimension, eternal life, I suppose. She claimed she'd already been alive for 1 billion years, but they have now split up into at least 2 different groups, perhaps just different personalities or different points of view, and one calls itself fifth dimension, the other calls itself something else, and they have a variety of theologies. But kind of buried pretty deep in the middle of this is a very big fundraising campaign with the products they're selling that don't have any medicinal value that made them a lot of money over the years. It's a fascinating story. It's the most unusual story I've ever done for Dateline. There's nothing quite like this one. And the deeper I got into the story of Amy Carlson, AKA Mother God, the more fascinated I became.
Keith, it sounds interesting. We will definitely tune in, and you can catch Dateline tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern on NBC.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.